ikuti program Camera, catatan Menko Airlangga.
Let me talk about the structural forces driving this contest. And you have to understand the structural forces so that you understand that no matter what happens, the US-China geopolitical contest will gain momentum in the next 10 to 20 years. And why am I confident? It's because of three structural forces. The first structural force is that has been around for 2,000 years or more. And everyone is speaking about this, this force, which is that whenever the world's #1 emerging power, which today is China, is about to overtake the world's #1 power, which today is United States of America, the world's #1 power always pushes down the world's #1 emerging power. This has been true throughout history for thousands of years. So this is why a Harvard professor, Graham Allison, has written about this, and he calls it the Thucydides trap. But that's the same idea, that always rising powers rise against established powers, and then they clash. And so for that reason, I'm very confident that this contest will carry on. And you notice that this contest was started by President Donald Trump, and after Donald Trump left, Joe Biden came. President Joe Biden reversed many of Trump's policies, but he didn't reverse any of Trump's policies on China. So it shows you that it's not driven by personalities, it's not driven by Trump, it's driven by deep structural forces. The first one, everyone speaks about. The second structural force, nobody speaks about except me. And this is, of course, there has been in the Western psyche, deep down, buried down there, a fear of the yellow peril. And this goes back to 800 years ago, when the Mongols, as you know, came close to conquering Europe. And that fear of being conquered by the Mongols led to a deep-seated psychological fear of, being conquered by yellow people. So as a result of that, there's always been this fear of the yellow peril, and that's at play now in the US-China contest. And when you say, well, that's about Europe, why does it involve the United States? Well, the United States is still very much, as you know, a child and not a major member of the Western civilization. And in American history, if you go back and read American history, way back in the 1890s, the United States Congress passed an act called the Chinese Racial Exclusion Act, right? So why would the US Congress pass a Chinese Racial Exclusion Act to keep out the Chinese? That was because of the fear of the yellow peril. And I want to emphasize the yellow peril dimension, because you assume that when it comes to geopolitics, people make their decisions calmly, rationally, but actually in geopolitics, emotions play a role also. And this yellow peril has created a strong emotional dimension in the US-China contest that we should be aware about also. And which also explains why this contest will carry on. And of course, the third structural force that's driving this US-China contest is a kind of a bipartisan consensus in the United States that China has let the United States down. Now, how has China let the United States down? Well, the Americans believe, quite sincerely, that when the Americans engaged China economically, as they did from the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, that United States would first open up the Chinese economy, and after opening up the Chinese economy, they would then open up the Chinese political system, and China would become a liberal democracy just like United States of America. And as you know, China has not become a liberal democracy like the United States of America, and therefore the Americans feel that the Chinese have cheated America. Now you may think this is a bit bizarre. Surely the Americans are not so naive as to believe that they can transform China's political system. But, fortunately, one of the senior officials in the current Biden administration, in fact, he's the chief American policymaker on Asian matters, and I know him also. His name is Kurt Campbell. He came out with an article in the magazine Foreign Affairs pointing out that for a long time, this is exactly what the American policymakers believe, that they would open up China's economy, open up China's political system, China would become like America, and then they would live happily ever after. And of course, that hasn't happened, and the Americans blame China for not opening up its political system. And later we can discuss whether or not that's a reasonable belief on the part of the Americans to have or not. So you can see these are the structural forces driving this contest. So it doesn't matter who's president, Trump as president or Biden as president. And by the way, Trump may come back as president in 2024, but then the contest will still carry on. It doesn't matter. It's driven by structural forces.
Ikuti program Camera, catatan Menko Airlangga.